Welcome to Wildlife Outdoors with your host, Russell and Jose. If you have a passion for conservation of the outdoors, or you're enjoying a calming hike in the mountains, an exhilarating kayak trip on the river, feeling a fish on the end of your line, cooking on an open flame in a primitive campsite, or stalking big game, just waiting for the perfect shot, you're in the right place. So put on your boots and polarized sunglasses and come along for the ride.
Welcome back to another episode of Wildlife Outdoors. I'm Russell, joined by my co-host Jose, and today we've got a really exciting episode lined up for you. Our guest is a modern-day mountain man whose passions stretch from the rugged backcountry of Wyoming to the plains of Texas. As an avid outdoorsman and dedicated conservationalist, he blends his small business with a deep love for the wild. He's the founder of Mountain Man Provision Co., a brand known for crafting all-natural beard care products with a purpose. 25% of his profits go straight to wildlife conservation efforts. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Chans Woolery. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. How are you?
Hey, dude, I'm doing great. We appreciate your time and hopping on with us. I feel like it's going to be a great episode.
No doubt. I'm looking forward to it. It's been busy getting back and forth and making our schedules align, but I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, I'm glad we did too. And so for the listeners out there, this is Chans Woolery, and we actually met at the Black Bear Bonanza. And so I posted a few things of the event, which, that reminds me, I never got you your video of your stuff, of your booth, did I?
No worries.
But he was there. He had a vendor booth there at the Black Bear Bonanza up in Northwest Arkansas, and it's Mountain Man Provision Co. So you want to tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah, that was a really good time. We need to go out to more of those events, but Mountain Man Provision Co., at its core is really just like a outdoor lifestyle community. And we just got over a year ago, our first year in business. So that's pretty exciting. But it really started out, I had a beard that was like 8 inches long, and my wife's a barber, and I was always just constantly like hammering through beard oil. And she was like, well, why don't you just make your own? So Mountain Man Provision Co. started with that. I started making my own beard oil, my own beard balms, things like that. And then it naturally progressed to, well, not everybody has a beard, not everybody has a mustache. So like, how can I, what else can we do for the community? So started putting out hats, apparel, all that jazz. And, that's kind of what we've grown in today. We've got some other ventures we're working on. But that, at its inception, that was it. And our biggest goal is everything that we make, we donate 25% back to wildlife conservation. So really it's like, just trying to run the business and do good in the outdoor industry as a whole. So
that's awesome.
I love a business with like a mission.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm blessed, right? Like I've got a really good career. And so it's like, this is really the passion project. And so being able to give back, is nice. So.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
So how did you come up with the idea to kind of do that 25% kickback towards conservation? Like what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, really, it was just, what can separate ourselves from everybody else out there, right? I guess for one. And then, I really wanted to do, honestly, like a nonprofit, but anytime you look at anything business wise, everybody always tells you like, don't start a nonprofit. You're just putting yourself in a corner. So
right.
We wanted to do a number that made sense, right? Like we're still a business. We've got to be able to make some money, and 25% is pretty much where we landed on. Like we can operate, keep our costs low, stay lean, and be able to give a considerable amount back to, nonprofits. And then eventually if we can grow big enough in time, hopefully we can start our own nonprofit attached to Mountain Man Provision Co. and then, fund projects directly through our nonprofit, boots on the ground, doing projects in these states. Cause I think there's a lot lost. I mean, I'm sure you guys are involved in a number of nonprofit organizations, just name, Ducks Unlimited or whoever. I'm not calling any names out, but it's frustrating because sometimes it feels like you don't really know where your money goes. Mm-hmm. And so like, if I were to start that side, we really want to, and we're doing it now. Like we want to make sure the money's going, we can tell where it's going, direct to these smaller nonprofits that are really getting the projects done. And it's not just feeding some giant account somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's awesome. The transparency and knowing where your money goes will hopefully turn into something great, because I know that when I'm donating to whether it be a nonprofit or a company in general, like it's nice to know. I mean, I want to give out of the good of my heart and for whatever the cause may be, But at the same time, it's nice to know that your money's going somewhere, not just to the company or not just in some, corrupt person's pocket. And so I hope the transparency side of it actually like helps promote what you're trying to do, because conservation is one thing that, we impose taxes and fees on ourselves for conservation, but as of recent, it almost seems like that's probably going to be going down in terms of government aid and programs and stuff like that. So it's really going to fall back on us and businesses and stuff like that to do a lot of the work for conservation, is what it seems like. So I hope it's able to, flourish with your company, because we all need it, and wildlife and nature needs it for sure.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, hunters, anglers, anybody that's involved in the outdoor space and actually recreates, in those environments, they're oftentimes the largest funding source for any sort of conservation, right? Because all that money should be, I can't say for certain, right, but all the allocation of tags and those licenses directly go right back to funding those conservation programs. And so it's we want to work with the state game and fish agencies direct on that level, like, hey, what projects do you have going on? This is down the road, and maybe working on trying to fund, a specific project. And that's really what the 10-year outlook is, right? Like when I was in the military, I did 6 years in the Army, and we used to talk about, that we had like, 25, 50, 100 meter targets. And like, this was a 300 meter target where we're at right now, but we got to crawl before we can get up and run. So,
well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your service. As a show here, we're big supporters of the military.
Thanks for your support.
For your service.
Appreciate it.
Of course. So with the inception of the company and the whole, of course, conservation thing is they tie in together, and we can see how there's a bond between the two. But how did you go from like, okay, my wife said I'm going to start making these products. Where did you get to where you're at? Like, how did you start finding out how to actually do it, or what ingredients did you source? Was this stuff that you just had at home, or like how much work went into actually just starting up a company for beard oil?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of research, trial and error. I probably threw away more beard oil than I ever used in the start. And beard oil as a whole, right? Like the goal of it is to get as close as you can to replicating the natural oil of your skin. Mm-hmm. And so I've got, a blend of like 4 different carrier oils, and then your fragrance, we use, essential oils. We try to stay away from any like of the, artificial fragrance oils and things like that, 'cause when you put it on your face, but, started talking with my wife, like some of the things they use, some of the things that her esthetician friends and stuff use, started experimenting with that. And then finally just got a blend that I really liked. It's kind of a medium consistency thickness, and that's a whole different, rabbit hole you can go down into. Like I could probably have spent 6 months just trying to figure out how thick of a beard oil I wanted to make. So eventually I just kind of had to decide on one, and it worked really well. I actually had, when I had my really long beard, I always struggled with like what I call beard drift, so like my skin underneath would get really, really dry, and it looked like I just had dandruff all over my shirts all the time. It was awful. And like anything that I found that was store-bought wasn't really doing the trick. And so, there's some, like, I was buying some really good companies. There was a veteran-owned one for a while that I was using. It's called Huckleberry Beard Co. They're awesome. So kind of started looking at what he uses and kind of formulated based on that, made my own blend, and then finally got something that actually worked for my skin. And that's where I was like, oh man, maybe I should start selling this. So that's how, and I'd always had the idea, like I thought Mountain Man Provision Co. was just an awesome business name. Having grown up in Wyoming, that whole entire Mountain Man, the Rendezvous, everything's named after, John Coulter, Jim Bridger, all these famous old mountain men. So that's always just kind of been in the back of my mind. So that's how the two they came together. So
that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I know so much about beard oils. There's so many of them that I've used.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a snake oil salesman and tell you we can get you a big old nice beard, but it'll take care of that you got going on.
Yeah, no, I don't have much going on with it. Actually, this is a new thing. Like the mustache, like it's very thin, but it's a new thing. I don't grow facial hair very well. It's the Native American blood in me.
Sure. Yeah, mustaches are in though, so you got to get one.
I know, right? I tried. It was funny for the longest time, Jose, and a lot of our friends that can grow facial hair would always give me hell for it. And at one point, if I'm not mistaken, they gifted me some fake mustaches. And yeah, it was always a struggle, but now I'm able to get a little shadow. So
there you go. It don't look bad.
Yeah, but Jose's been able to grow a beard since freaking high school.
Yeah, I need to send Jose
Yeah.
some beard oil. Have him try it out, man.
Dude, it's kind of funny because when you're talking about that beard druff, man, I feel like for me, especially here lately, like the last year or so, it's probably gotten um worse than in years past. I've been just trying to find a good product, and like you said, the store bought stuff like at the big box places.
Big box stores.
They
Yep.
Yeah, it ain't doing it, man. And I've tried some other products that have worked or seem to have worked before, and then Russell told me about your stuff. So like, man, I need to give that stuff a try. So I might be placing an order here pretty soon, dude.
Yeah,
Um,
man. You have to give me your information, later on, and I'll send you some to try out and see if you like it.
I appreciate it. So what this might be a little getting, I guess, into the weeds a little bit, but like what scents and things like do you guys have so far? Like, or is it like a seasonal
Yeah.
thing, a lot of variety? Like what was the OG? Like how'd that all start out?
Yeah, so Bridger's Blend is our original like flagship. I've got, let me see, I've got 4 different scented blends out right now, and then I've got a non-scented which I call downwind blend. So if you don't want anything, it's just our carrier oils. So it still does the hydration. Bridger's Blend, obviously like the OG, best of the best mountain man in my opinion. He was in Wyoming. Obviously Fort Bridger and all that was in Wyoming, so that's where that name came from. And I kind of tried to make it. If you've ever been in the Rocky Mountains in the spring when there's a rainstorm, sagebrush has like this very unique smell. It's almost like a sweet kind of earthy dirt smell at the same time. Like you can smell the rain and you can smell the sage, and so that's what that one is. Reminiscent of. It's got a lot of sage to it, and then some rain dirt notes. It's pretty unique. Started with that one and then put out, I kind of wanted to just keep with the Mountain Men name. So we started putting out, I put a woodcutters out, for all the old logging camps and things like that when they were doing all the crosshack, cutting ties for the railroad and stuff going across the transcontinental. So the woodcutters blend, it's pretty, a cedar, pine, juniper blend to it. And then I've got, one that's called Kit Carson's blend. It smells kind of like an old fashioned. So it's got some bourbon and orange and vanilla to it. He was from Kentucky originally, so I was like, well, that just fits right in with the bourbon side of things. And then Coulter's Hell was originally what John Coulter they referred to. He actually discovered Yellowstone at like the original like, geysers and stuff in Yellowstone. First white man, and that is to see them. And so that Coulter's Hell's blend's kind of it's got a citrus. Grapefruit kind of musk smell to it. It's unique, man, because like you would think that the fruitiness doesn't play well, but it's pretty good. I like it. So
that's pretty dope, dude.
yeah,
I like how like each name comes from I don't know something historical. Like there's a story behind it all. That's pretty awesome.
yeah, man. Obviously, like branding, right? We wanted to stick with the theme of the company being mountain man driven, and all of our products are kind of that way. I throw some of my shirts and stuff. There's I'm living in Texas now. I've lived here for the last 10 years. And so I spend a lot of time in Texas and go back to Wyoming. So I threw some shirts, in for kind of the Texas crowd, the Southern folks. I've got a shirt that's got a white-tailed deer, a duck, and a dove on it, which is about as Southern as I think it can get for hunting. And so just trying to like go back and forth and really just represent kind of who I am in the outdoor space and in my history and my experiences between Texas and Wyoming, and then we're just going to see where it goes, man. Always trying to come up with more blends, but right now I've really been working on my my hat and apparel game, trying to get more of that out there and really put out quality product, not just quantity, because I could do a million different designs, but it's kind of at this point I've got enough out there. I really just need to start focusing on pushing the business and brand recognition and get people to know the name of what Mountain Man Provision Co. is. So
sweet,
that is
dude.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
That hat that you're wearing right now looks pretty sweet.
These are my newest one. I've got I think 5 different colors. This is my new hat manufacturer that I've went with. They're actually veteran owned out of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Nice.
So that's pretty cool. And then they just make a really nice hat. That was a battle in itself, like trying to find hats that were quality, right? But you weren't paying ridiculous price because you still got. I try to make things affordable, like as much. And it's getting harder now the way the economy is right now, right? Everything's kind of under attack and uncertain at this point in time. We'll see. Hopefully that levels off here pretty soon, and I think it will. But I just wanted, to find something that was good quality and wasn't going to cost somebody, some of these companies are charging $40-$50 for hats nowadays, and it's like that's crazy. I mean, good on them, I guess, if people are buying it, but I can't justify that high.
Man,
we tried getting into the merchandise.
I know, and I love hats. Yeah, I used to buy hats a lot, and then now they're just getting outrageous. It's crazy.
I've got a little hat problem too. I have to go through once a year and like clean out my closet. And so like owning my own business has helped with that, right? Because like I pretty much just wear my hats now. But it's also made it bad because every hat I make, I want one of them. So this is like,
I don't wear very many hats, but I own way too damn many hats. Like when I just recently moved a couple months ago, and I'm just like, man, why do I have so many hats? And I've worn every single hat, but it's not like I don't wear a hat every day type of thing. Like I don't wear hats at work and stuff. So it's really only a weekend thing that I'm wearing hats, and I have like 40, 50 hats. And it's like I go somewhere, I visit somewhere, and I have to buy a hat, or I go to an event and I have to get a hat. So, and then of course we try getting into the merchandise stuff. And so I have Wildlife Outdoors hats, and it's just, I collect them and I don't even use them, but I mean, there's stories behind every single one of them and their experiences I remember. So I think that's why I save them. It's more of like a sentimental thing, but
like the old Shimano hat, dude.
Yeah, dude, I have this old Shimano Curado hat that I got back in.
Oh, dude, it was like 2012, maybe?
Yeah, 2011, 2012, something like that. And that truck has been through hell. That hat has been through hell. I've lost it on I-35 just outside of Austin twice. I've lost it in the Gulf of Mexico. It down? Wow. Yeah. One time I was driving, I was working for the county and I was hauling material and I lost it out the window driving down the road in the dump truck. And after work, I went back and found it on the side of the road. Wow. I've lost it 2 or 3 times in the Gulf of Mexico. I've lost it on the San Marcos River at Rio Vista. I've lost it on the Caddo River here in Arkansas. I got shot with a firework artillery shell and put a huge burn hole in it. That hat has been through hell.
I can tell some stories. I've got a couple like that. Yeah. It's funny how you hold on to things like that. I'm sure every dude does it. Like they just got these they just refuse to get rid of, you know?
Yeah.
I've got a pair of Hey Dudes that I think I bought when they originally came out, and they're like my adventuring Hey Dudes. And they're kind of dangerous at this point in time because like there's no tread left on them. If it rains, I might as well just fall over. But I just can't seem to get myself to throw them away. But and I've got, you know, like I'm working on trying to release some newer product. I've got a couple fishing shirts out there. I've actually got 2 different designs. It's the same design. I'm doing a light brown and a white one that's going to have like fly patterns on it. So, because obviously like I'm headed towards, it's fly fishing season's coming up. Right. So, and I've got a trip coming up actually this next week. I'm going to be up in your neck of the woods, Arkansas, and then going up into Missouri. So that's going to be kind of my test run for these shirts and stuff. So
that's nice. Awesome.
Yeah, just trying to stay relevant, put out new products, you know, that are good, and the amount of time that goes into that, like, because you know, I might design something and then have it produced, and then by the time it gets here, I'm like, oh man, that really missed the mark, and so I've spent more money on research and development of clothing.
Right. Hey, and what better way to do R&D but yourself, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
So random question: will any of those fishing shirts happen to have a hood?
All of them. Yeah, I do all hooded fishing shirts. Yeah. So I'm doing hooded fishing shirts, and then I'm doing the gaiters too. Oh, I mean, I'm, you know, the sun and I are not friends, so I am 100%. I don't tan. You know, it's like every bit. I got sunscreen on the nose, and I don't try not to show any other skin.
Yeah. See, we made our fishing shirts. And well, they were just UPF 50 plus or whatever they are. Yeah. They weren't like button up shirts, but like long sleeve shirts. And I made half of them with hoods and without hoods because I can't stand hoods. And everybody that ordered shirts ordered them with hoods. And I'm like, that's just, I never asked.
I can't be the only person.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I actually ordered a shirt from Wildfly Productions, and it was a bamboo shirt. I
love Wildfly.
Yeah, dude. And so I ordered one of their merch shirts, and that thing is so comfortable, but it has a hood on it, and I got used to wearing it. And then so now I wear our Wildlife Outdoors ones that have hoods on them. And I'm getting used to the hoods, but for the longest time, I was like, why the hell would you have a hood on a shirt? You know, just wear a hat. But the whole back of the neck thing, and I think my thing was having the hood. I feel like I can't see out of the peripherals as much.
Yeah.
And so that's just why I would never wear it. I'll just have my hat and my glasses. But as I wear them more, it's like, man, I actually kind of like this. And it's like your neck doesn't get as hot, which kind of keeps you cool. And so I'm starting to actually kind of lean more towards hooded shirts. And then my thing was like, why have a hood on it if it's just going to be in the back bothering me? But you don't even feel it when it's off. So
I never used to really care either one way. And then I did a couple trips down on and the coastal flats chasing red fish down in here in Texas, and when you're out for like 8 hours on a boat and you're getting pulled around, it's like that sun's just beating down on you. I was like, you gotta have every bit of sun covered up, and it's those fishing shirts are nice though, because like you said, they're lightweight, they're breathable, but you don't get the sunburn. And so now I can't live without a hood.
Same, dude. Russell's been missing out.
Right, I have, but I'm blessed. I don't really burn very well. I'm Native American, and I just get really dark. So I don't burn. So I guess I kind of have that luxury, but I'm still leaning more towards hooded shirts now. I actually have a few. I have some of ours, and I think I have 2 from Wildfly Productions now. And then I've had a couple that were gifted to me from big box stores and stuff like that. And I'm getting used to wearing those. So I actually really enjoy the hooded shirts now. It's kind of getting there.
Absolutely.
Now I'd like to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. First, we have Bucked Up. When you're out in the wild, whether you're stalking a trophy buck, casting for that elusive bass, or trekking through rugged terrain, you need more than just grit. You need fuel that matches your passion for the outdoors. That's where Bucked Up energy drinks and supplements come in. Crafted for those who live life on the edge, Bucked Up offers a range of products designed to enhance your performance, endurance, and recovery. From the early morning hunts to the late night fishing trips, Bucked Up has your back. Use promo code WLO20 at checkout to receive 20% off your order. Explore their full range of products by clicking on the link in the description. Next, we have Foretold Coffee Company. Start your adventure with a brew as bold as the journey ahead. Foretold Coffee Company crafts ethically sourced small batch roasts for those who find peace in the wild. Founded by Army veteran Joshua Sandoval, each cup reflects resilience, exploration, and the spirit of the outdoors. Whether it's the light Peruvian cocoa, the medium El Salvadoran bourbon, or the dark Mexican honey, each cup is perfect for the base camp mornings or fireside evenings. Subscribe to their monthly coffee club for 10% off and stay fueled for every expedition. To learn more, visit foretoldcoffeeco.com.
But
so you
man,
talked about growing up in Wyoming and stuff like that. So is that kind of where you started being more into conservation and hunting and fishing and stuff like that? Is that something you did growing up?
Yeah, absolutely, dude. So my family homesteaded up there in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up. My family's got a pretty decent ranch up there. So growing up, hunting every fall with my dad or my grandfather, going out constantly. And then my best friend, his dad and him are both professional elk guides. So really just grew up around it. That's what we did. I rodeoed in school, really didn't play any sports. And then we were either rodeoing or we were out, shooting something, chasing rabbits, chasing coyotes. I mean, that's just kind of what you did growing up there, and spending a lot of time in the mountains, chasing brookies, just whatever. So, and then, obviously through that, you get involved with like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. You used to go to all the banquets, the Ducks Unlimited dinners, stuff like that. And then the more new ones, Mule Deer Fanatics, things like that got involved. And I kind of took a pause when I went to college. I really didn't hunt as much. And then getting out of college and moving back down here to Texas, that really reignited it, and it was kind of a struggle, honestly, moving down here to Texas at first, just because of I shouldn't say lack of public land accessibility, because there's actually a lot of public land acres in Texas, but it's just so different than Wyoming. It's like you can drive 20 minutes in Wyoming and be on thousands of acres of BLM or U.S. Forest Service land, versus here you've really got to know, and then there are pockets here, pockets there. So that was kind of a struggle for me when I moved down here, but I made a lot of really good friends in Texas, and then there's definitely opportunities to hunt. It's really just about who you know down here.
Yeah.
So
because the public lands there in Texas are typically leased private land, so it's harder to come across. Like I've noticed here in Arkansas, like we have the national forest and stuff like that, and I'm going turkey hunting in a couple of days, and I'm literally going 15 minutes from home. And that's national forest, or I can go out to, fish all these different bodies of water, and there's WMAs everywhere. So yeah, there's all sorts of different public lands I can hunt around here, and archery only and rifle when it comes to deer season and stuff like that. And it's far different from what I experienced growing up in Texas.
And public lands in Texas are a little misleading. Like I think There's like over 1 million or something like that, or close to acres of public lands in Texas. But when you take a look, like, I guess proportionately to the amount of total acreage in Texas, it really amounts to like a very small amount in total. So while there
Right.
is public lands, there's like really not that much. Like kind of like what Chance was saying. I mean, there are pockets, and sometimes you still have to drive an hour, 2 hours, or maybe even more, depending on where you're at in the state, to find some. And there are a lot of WMAs, and Texas does have like a draw system for different hunts. And usually
Right.
those hunts are going to be like, I guess better opportunities for maybe getting something, because the WMAs and things that are open to the general public, I mean, they get flooded with hunters every year. So super high pressure, but people are still super successful who actually put in the time and really get to know the place. Like I've seen some big deer come out of some of the East Texas WMAs. I mean, massive bucks. And
Yeah.
but it's pretty cool. Like Texas, I mean, they got exotics, like they got drawings for exotics, like nilgai and axis and stuff, and then they have the big game. What's it, the big game drawings, something like that? We can go for like Aoudad and bighorn sheep, and I think there's an elk hunting package if I'm not mistaken. Like there's some actually really cool ones too. And it's a little I mean, yeah, it's super different compared to the Western states, but there are some opportunities. We did a lot of public land dove hunting a lot in South Texas when I was going to college there, and that was a lot of fun because the closest one was literally like behind a Walmart, like a minute down the road, like just this open field. It's only like 40 acres, but I mean, like just outside the city limits, dude. So we can be there from campus in like 10 minutes. So we'd go there before class, shoot some birds, go to class, then we meet up there in the afternoon and shoot the rest of our limit or whatever. It was a lot of fun, man. But um and then of course the coast, like we did a lot of duck hunting there too. So there's a lot of public land opportunities for that as well. But yeah, I mean it's hard, but it's doable for sure in Texas.
Man, that's definitely on my list. I wanna get down to the coast and do some coastal duck hunting. I've got a I've been on a lease every year since I've been in Texas. With I think there was 1 year I wasn't, and so like hit that pretty hard, in January because it really doesn't seem like the duck hunt really turns on. And I mean, you get some early teal action, but
Mhm.
it seems like that late season January timeframe. But I definitely want to get down to the coast. I just I hear it's kind of one of those deals like you're either going to get a pretty cool little mixed bag or it's like you're going to kill your two redheads and call it a day.
Yeah, yeah, dude, exactly like that. Because
Yeah.
there are days where we would go out there, dude, and I mean we saw ducks flying. They just wouldn't decoy. The only ones that would were the redheads, and they didn't care, dude. We were one time we were out there. We shot our limit of redheads. So and we didn't see anything else flying. So we were out there picking up our spread, and there was one flock of redheads rolling through, and they're still landing in the decoys while we're just there picking them up and stuff. Like they just did not care. And there's other days like, and I was never with my buddies when they had those days, but they're shooting like awesome mixed bags like pintail, widgeon, some buffleheads and things like that. I'm like, what the hell, dude? How come these birds don't show up whenever I go out? But so I've most of my duck hunts have ended with my with my redhead bag limit, and that was it.
Well, just the weather too, right? Like we have to talk
Yeah.
about, I mean, climate change, anybody that says it's not real or at least, can't acknowledge that things have gotten a little goofy here lately is
Mhm.
lying to themselves. So like 2 years ago, not this last season before, I killed a cinnamon teal like in the dead center of Texas. And
Really?
that should what was a full plumed out Drake cinnamon teal doing in the center of Texas? I mean,
Wow.
that's just interesting in itself, right? Like yeah, I always figured I had to go to California to find one of those, and that was a really awesome duck season, right? For Texas because the whole entire flyway was under drought, and so like
Mhm.
everybody in Arkansas and Mississippi were just complaining about how there's no birds. Where's our birds? Well, they were all in the central flyway, so we had more pintail. I mean, it was crazy. Like I you'd look up and you'd see 20 pintail every time you went out, and it was like what is going on right now? And then so of
Wow.
course this season, it kind of got back to the normal Gadwall and teal situation that I'm used to. But we still catch an occasional, random off chance pintail or something coming in.
Nice.
But I'm
Dude,
actually
that's always
going to Argentina this June to
oh
hunt
man.
ducks for 4 days. And so
That's awesome.
it's going to be pretty nuts, man. My buddy and I were taking our wives and really looking forward to because they've got like 16 different species of ducks that I mean I've never even seen. So
Wow.
Really?
Dude, that's so
Huh.
sick.
Dude,
yeah,
that sounds
yeah.
like a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
It'll be cool, man. That's again that happens to do with those Ducks Unlimited dinners. We may have had a couple too many drinks and bought that in an auction. And so then once you
Nice.
buy it, you're like, oh crap, yeah, I've got to go to Argentina now. That sucks, but so
I've been to a
But-
couple banquets where it's like I find myself bidding on something, then I get outbid, and then the next day I'm like, oh, thank God.
thank God that didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't win that one.
I'm actually going to the same it's the Mineral Wells Ducks Unlimited banquet this Saturday, so I'm gonna keep my hand down this time. I think I better get to Argentina first before I buy another
Right.
trip.
Be a good
Dude,
idea.
Yeah,
But
my wife might
sometimes-
kill me if I don't.
Oh man. Dude, but sometimes you can get some pretty you can get pretty lucky on those banquets, man. We had I was going to college in Kingsville. We had I think it was a Quail Coalition banquet. There's a bunch of different donations, and one of them was it was like a TFO, BVK, fly rod, and reel package. It was valued, I think, at the time around $800. My buddy made, I think it was $150 bid, and he won it. I was like, damn, that's
Wow.
pretty sweet.
Yeah, they have some pretty sweet stuff sometimes that you can pick up, and then you get stuff like I won that hatchet back there, and like I bought way too many raffle tickets, and I mean it's awesome, right? But I don't use it for anything. It just sits there on the desk.
Dude, well, that's a sweet little
But-
piece, though, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You got all sorts of cool stuff back there. What
Yeah,
kind of hide
dude.
is that on the wall?
Oh, that's a moose hide, man. Yeah, it's a moose hide that came from Wyoming. And then you can't see over here. I've got a table over here. I've actually got a seal hide, a ring seal hide that my buddy brought back from Greenland. It
Wow.
was traditionally sourced for subsistence hunting by the Inuits up there. So that was pretty cool.
That's
I
awesome.
think that's my prized possession right now because I don't know anybody else that has a seal hide.
Right. Yeah. No,
That's
I'm
pretty
from
sick.
Alaska, and I don't even know anybody that has a seal hide.
Yeah. So, are you
That's
from
awesome.
are you a part of like one of the coastal tribes there in Alaska?
Yeah.
Or?
Not coastal, but Athabascan, which is more inland. But
Okay. Yeah.
yes, sir. I am Athabascan native. So
I'll be darned. That's pretty neat. Yeah.
yeah,
I-
I wish
you're
I
the-
knew
you-
more about it.
Yeah,
But
I had
really
a professor in college that you're the only second, from that area because he was Klingit Klingit, I think is what they're called out of Washington. So that you're the second tribal member from up there I've ever met.
Awesome. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad to be able to be at service.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I actually work with someone who she is Inuit and from up there. She's a Yupik from
Okay.
from Alaska, and
Yeah.
she's actually from internal Alaska as well. And I'm like, how do we both end up in Arkansas and working for the same locally owned company? Like it's crazy
That's
how
pretty wild.
small of a world it is sometimes.
It
No
is
doubt, man.
indeed.
Speaking of which, it's not even I just finished a book, Thousand Trails Home by Seth Kittner, I think is his name. If you haven't read that or listened to the audiobook, man, check it out. It's pretty cool. It's basically he's white and his whole family's white, but they grew up in this I think 80s, 70s and 80s. He was growing up in Alaska, like in the northern boundaries, living with the Inuits and living
Really?
the traditional like igloo style subsistence life off of caribou. It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, so
Dude,
check it out.
That
Wow.
sounds like a good read. You said it's called a thousand trails home.
A Thousand Trails Home. Yeah, my life with the caribou or something like that. It's really good. Yeah, man.
Dude, so that moose, was that one you shot?
No, my dad's best friend actually killed that moose. So he gave it to me. He was selling pieces of it for like fly tying material and stuff like that. And he was like, "Do you want this moose?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I had it on the floor for a while, but it sheds really bad. So now it just sits on the wall.
Damn, dude, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I can't believe how big they are, dude. They're such a large animal. It's insane.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's this is missing. I mean, most of the neck. Like you just can see the rear legs back there. I mean, just how
Yeah.
wide that is from the shank
Yeah.
area or that lower hip. Yeah, it's crazy.
Damn, that's pretty cool, man. There's
Yeah.
a podcast I was listening to. Have you ever heard of one called Ologies?
Mm-mm.
So there's this podcast called Ologies. The host, her name is Allie, and she essentially just she just interviews people with, I guess, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes niche, I guess, areas of study or areas of expertise. And there was one person she interviewed, and they were, I guess they researched cervids, so those in the deer family, but specifically, I think she was working with moose. And she said that one of the softest things that she's ever felt in her entire life was the muzzle or the snout of a moose. I was like, huh. You'd think that an animal that large would be like, wouldn't be a quality that might be associated with them. That's pretty interesting.
Pretty cool absolutely. Critter. They're super cool, man. It's definitely high on my list of animals I want to harvest at some point. Just because the meat's great. Like I love to. Anytime somebody wants to give me some moose meat, I'm always about it. But I think it's just so hard to draw anymore. Well, especially since I don't have residency in Wyoming anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to draw a moose tag up there, I don't have enough years left of hunting to probably get all the preference points I would need. So really? I think eventually, if it's just it's every year you have to get more and more preference points, and luckily, Wyoming does a really good job of like 80% of all their allocated tags go back to residents, and so that other 20%, is up for that lottery system, and God knows how many people you're competing against, for a very very limited amount of tags.
That's true.
So I think if I ever do, I'll probably just go up to one of the provinces in Canada, or try to go up to Alaska. To get a moose. Yeah.
Man, I think it'd be a pretty sweet hunt, dude. I got a buddy in Maine. He was like, we were just texting the other day, actually. He's like, dude, you should start putting in some applications for a moose tag. I'm like, dude, I'll never get drawn for that, but I probably should. I should start now. Man, that'd be sweet.
I've heard Maine is like sneakily, one you can draw a tag in. I haven't done any research in it, but I've heard that. I've actually, I can't remember if I know somebody personally or like a friend of a friend that drew a moose tag up there in Maine. So,
dude, that's pretty slick. Yeah, I need to start putting I need to start putting tags out there, man. Like, there's a lot of like I've never hunted out west. I mean, I hardly hunt in Texas as much as I'd like, but I'd love to be able to go after elk one day or mule deer. Pronghorn too. I think pronghorn are really cool little critters. I'd love to get one of those.
I'm actually taking my wife this year. Well, she should draw. We get landowners tags. So once she gets her tag, taking her up for her very first antelope hunt. So that'll be pretty cool. And then I usually try to do a deer every year. I put in for Kansas this year.
Nice, dude. Kansas, you're going to be hunting whitetail?
Yeah, hopefully. I didn't draw last year. I think I'll draw. I have a preference point now, so I think I should draw this year. So if I do, I've got a buddy raises bird dogs up there, and so get to go up and hang out with him, and hopefully get to kill a whitetail. that first part of December, and then go right into some upland bird hunting. So,
oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, go walk a bunch and miss, and then realize how much I need to shoot before duck season because.
Dude, I met somebody over at the Black Bear Bonanza that invited me to go pheasant hunting with him this year.
Yeah,
I'm super excited, dude. I've never been pheasant hunting. The only bird hunt I've ever done is dove hunting, and then I'm going turkey hunting this weekend for the first time. And I mean, I've been turkey hunting, but it was never really an experience. But I'm taking a whole weekend this time to try to figure them out. And yeah, dude, I'm excited to get out there and chase turkeys. But that pheasant hunt,
pheasant hunting is fun, man. It's a lot of walking, but.
yeah, that's what I've heard.
You get a good group of dogs though, and somebody that knows what where they're going and the land, especially if they've got my friend he partners with a lot of farmers up there and helps them out, and so he gets access to their places. So you can get around to some pretty good little pheasant holes, and then he does a really good job of just not over hunting it. He mainly just goes out and works his dogs, and I think half the time he probably doesn't even carry a shotgun with him. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So he knows the area, and his dogs are trained. So that's awesome. And he's not over hunting it. So it's like a win-win-win.
It's a win-win-win, man. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's, when it comes to upland, that's really the conservation side. I mean, I wish more ranchers and farmers, I wish there was more grant allocation and stuff like that, like they do through Ducks Unlimited. I mean, there's tons of that prairie pothole region of Ducks Unlimited that farmers straight up just stopped farming because they were given money by Ducks Unlimited to create wild, wetland sanctuaries essentially for these ducks to breed. I wish we could see a little bit more of that, or at least field rotating, maybe, putting, paying these farmers to add in more strips, instead of just a giant field with just the fence row and, the creeks and stuff like that have grass around it, maybe a little bit more intentional, ground cover for these quail, because that really helps with the predator situation and keeps all those raptors and coyotes and everything else guessing. Just anything to help the quail win, because they're pretty disadvantaged.
So the government used to. I mean, with all the stuff that's going on now, I'm not sure exactly if they've axed it or if they're going to. I don't know, but they used to have these types of I guess incentive programs, if you will, where where you could actually set aside like a certain portion of your property and receive like some payment on it, and that portion that's set aside is specifically to improve like wildlife habitat. I think the CRP or Conservation Reserve Program properties. I think that a lot of time they partner with like Quails Unlimited and Pheasants Forever and stuff like that, so that they can pay farmers and ranchers and things like that for the property they set aside, I think. And then I believe USDA used to have some programs like that. Again, I don't know if that's changed with recent things or not. I hope not, because man, it was a really cool program. And a lot of people really liked it, and the land benefited a lot from it, and of course the animals did too. But yeah, who knows now. We'll see. Hopefully they don't axe it.
It's a hard sell anyways, though, right?
It is,
because it's hard to get farmers and ranchers to quit farming and ranching. It's a hard, like, wait, hang on, you want to pay me to do what now? And it's like, well, we farmed this field there are these fields for 100+ years, too good to be true type situation. But I think as the newer generation, the people in their 30s, 40s, 50s start taking over, I think we're going to see a lot more as far as working with habitat restoration and access and stuff like that, because I think that old guard's kind of finally passing over the hill and passing things on. At least I like to think so. We'll see. I mean, really, that Russell, that kind of leads perfectly into like what we were talking about, the government situation. So specifically with Wyoming, right? Like grizzly bears. So Brian Nesvik, he is slotted to be the head of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, got picked up by Trump. And he's actually going through his confirmation hearings and everything right now, or if he hasn't been confirmed yet. So he was, when I was in the Wyoming National Guard, he was one of the commanders there. Got to know him personally, great guy. And then he was the head of the Wyoming Game and Fish for a while. So grizzly bears are like a unique situation, right? So they were federally listed in 1975. Their numbers, I think, were estimated to be like just over 100 in 1975.
Oh wow!
So yeah, they had been shot quite a bit by like ranchers and everybody raising cattle and just recreational hunting and trophy hunting or whatever back then. I've actually got a really cool picture of my great grandfather guiding a grizzly hunter, probably one of the last grizzly hunters like in that area back in like 1926 or something like that. So it was pretty common, that was guys were coming up to do that. But the original goal was like 500 bears. They would consider that recovered. And so I think there's like estimated to be like almost in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, like over 1,000 grizzly bears now.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, we're double what the recovered amount is, right?
Yeah.
And now it's turned into this huge problem where you've got like in just the upper Green River area of the Wind River Range in Wyoming, you've got a lot of cattle ranchers and stuff like that. Like the depredation of what they're losing, I think it's like 26% of their calf crop is they can't, not necessarily 100% tied to grizzly bears, right? Because they use a formula in like, for every one they find, there's probably 4 others that they don't find the carcass. And so they kind of assume and do the payouts back to, the ranchers and stuff based on that. But I think if you were to really boil it down, it would be like 26% of total calf crop is like, going to grizzlies now.
Well,
and
that's
it's
insane.
Yeah, man, it is becoming this huge problem, right? And so like Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, have put these programs together time and time again to basically state manage it like they do every other, big game or anything else out there. And it just constantly gets, shut down. They'll put a plan in place. And then for whatever reason, these big support groups, advocacy groups that, want to, protect the bears, there's so many and they're not even worth naming, to be honest with you, because they're just completely anti-hunting. I mean, really is what it boils down to. They just fight it, and then some district. It's the same thing we saw with wolves, right? Like they make a big fuss of it, and then some district court judge in New York City says, "Okay, still it's still illegal. Don't delist them." So I'm hopeful that with Brian Nesbitt getting up there in the top position for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, that we might actually finally see grizzly bears be state managed. I mean, at least that's. I haven't talked to Brian about it. I'd love to, honestly, just to pick his brain. I'm sure he'd be pretty tight-lipped at this point in time.
Yeah.
But, hopefully that's what we're going to. And we need to see it, right? Because there's no reason for the feds to be managing state resources. I mean, the wildlife belongs to the people in those areas. And it's like, okay, if you want to manage the things within the greater Yellowstone National Park boundaries, sure. But when it starts getting outside of the park, like it did with the wolves, put it back on the state, and like, what's the best way to manage, hunting, right? Like it's not, and then it's not trophy hunting. Everybody wants to make that argument in these counter grizzly bear. They're like, well, they're just trophy hunters. It's like, no, there's no such thing as trophy hunting. Trophy hunting's illegal. It's the same thing they saw with, I don't know if you were following that big push with trying to ban mountain lion hunting in Colorado this year.
No, I haven't followed that too much.
Yeah, so it was on the ballot, this year, and luckily it got voted down. But basically, they were trying to turn around and say that they worded it like, "Oh, let's ban trophy cat hunting in Colorado," and it was like, "Oh, well, that's not a thing, anyways, right? Like trophy hunting's illegal." So yeah, I mean, it's just it's one of these things that, like, I think outdoorsmen, we need to get more vocal and like get out there and start really talking to people and making them understand, because we're definitely the minority when it comes to population density, and the people in these cities, they just don't understand it. So they're literally, they understand what they're told, and they have no, if you would have interviewed 9 people on the street and said, "Hey, do you think we should be able to go and kill grizzly bears for sport?" Of course they're going to say no, right? Everybody wants to protect the bear, Smokey the Bear. Like, look at all the way things have been put towards people, and it's like we've got to start having some real conversations with people about why we need to manage this with hunting, and what that looks like, because they need to understand that these states, this isn't going to be, we've recovered the population, but it's like that's just the beginning. Now let's manage it. Let's properly manage it, because if you've got an apex predator that's just running around with no checks, you're going to have tons of problems, and we're already seeing it.
So. And we've talked about that a little bit in past episodes, talking about how ballot biology ties into a lot of things, and there's all these advocacy groups, and there's all these people that really don't know how ecology works and stuff like that. And with all the things going on in the government right now, I feel like there's people that are appointed in positions that are harmful to just recreation in general, whether it be hunting, fishing, anything like that. And so to hear that, because I didn't know, who was up for confirmation for the head of Fish and Wildlife, but I do know that the Secretary of the Interior, that appointment kind of, I didn't really agree with, and I didn't understand. I know the Secretary of the Interior is over more than just lands and fish and wildlife and stuff like that. But he's a businessman that actually mortgaged inherited farmland to start a software company that he eventually sold off to Microsoft. So it's like you have this businessman that obviously doesn't have the interior and public lands and lands that really belong to taxpayers in his, it really doesn't have those in the right mind. And to see him in the position that he's in, it kind of, I was confused about that decision, but to hear that there's somebody that hopefully will end up heading the U.S. Fish and Wildlife that isn't business minded like that. Hopefully he does get confirmed and makes the changes that need to be changed and allows states to be able to manage their own resources, because at the federal level, controlling things and being able to shut down departments and utilize, taxpayers' lands for mining and logging and stuff like that just isn't going to benefit wildlife. And it's really an uphill battle for us at that point as conservationists to be able to make differences and make waves in ecology if things keep going the way that they've been seeming to go recently, which sucks.
Yeah, no, it really does. And it's one of those things, right? It's like there's a balance there, right? Between like, especially the energy sector and public land use and everything like that. Like, Wyoming's primarily, it's a state that makes a lot off of the oil and gas industry. And these things can work together. We've shown it, right? Like you don't have to lose the right to recreate on land and take care of wildlife and stuff just to have these, I can guarantee you that, a drilling rig and a pipeline is way less worse on wildlife than a windmill farm or God forbid, those awful solar farms arrays that you see. It's like, not to be cliche, but that one scene that Taylor Sheridan did with John Dutton. I don't know if you watched that Yellowstone show, but he was basically goes into his cabinet meeting and he's talking about the sage grouse study and stuff like that, solar array impact on sage grouse, and he was like, you idiots, where do you think this? They're like, well, how are you going to put this solar? They're like, we're going to bulldoze all the sagebrush. He's like, and you don't think that'll impact the sage grouse? And they're like, well, no. He's like, well, where do the sage grouse live? He's like, in the sagebrush, you idiots. And it's like, it's sad that we have to get that linear because people in government truly don't understand sometimes.
Yeah.
And so
it boggles my mind because I feel like a lot of that is, common sense type of stuff. And I don't know if they're doing it for personal gain or what, but there's a lot of things. It's like that. It's simple common sense, and it's affecting so many things and so many things that we've worked for. And I mean, things that have been put into play 100 years ago are now being affected. And I think a lot of it's probably for personal gain, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sure. Or they're feeding somebody's lobby. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but we, and that kind of leads into another good point, right? Like, doing podcasts and things like this, like there's like two groups of outdoorsmen and we really all need to unite because there's like a whole movement of like the hunt quietly, you know what I mean? And like people are like, don't talk about it. Don't post on Instagram, don't post on Facebook and stuff. And I totally understand and respect that because there's nothing I hate more than just like these hunting influencers, right? Like they're clearly out there just for clicks, likes and stuff like that. And so that was like one of my big goals with Mountain Man Provision Co. I want to grow this into like a true outdoor lifestyle community of people that really do care about the conservation side. Like that's why we're doing it. You know what I mean? And that's where the 25% donation and everything came back to. Cause like at the end of the day, dude, I don't care if I get 10 likes or 100 likes. If I change one person's mind and they're like, okay, I really need to pay more attention to this and make sure my money and my tax dollars and everything's going to support conservation, support land access initiatives, I've won, and I know it's definitely it's a hard uphill battle to fight, especially in today's social media day and age where everybody is just selling for clout and clicks. But I've got nothing but time. So
yeah. And social media is real strange because there's a lot of people that are combating what we try to do. And we seem to be what it seems like more of a silent majority. Like majority of us enjoy hunting, enjoy fishing. And even those that don't necessarily hunt or fish themselves, there's a lot of people out there that aren't against it. It may not be for them, but they're not against it. But it seems like the ones that want to be the advocates for those that can't speak for themselves. Like, I feel like that's what we are as conservationists. We want to speak for those that can't speak for themselves. And we want to be able to preserve these resources, if you want to call them that, for future generations. But these people that don't understand how ecology works and understand, how conservation works, they just want to stop everybody from killing them because it's bad. It's like, you don't even understand how this all works. Like, you don't understand how much of an impact we've made for the better of this animal over the past, 100, 200 years that we've been, paying for these things and licenses and just efforts of conservation.
Well, it's been proven, right? Like the North American model of conservation management time and time has proved that the hunter and fisher and trapper are taking care of wildlife better. I mean, look at England, right? Like I was listening to, I think Ramsey Russell was over there talking to somebody, a punt gun hunter. I mean, Christ, they still allow punt gunning, which, whatever. Those are cool as hell, right? But it's not good on duck numbers. And then, like you just look at England as a whole, like you can't even deer hunt and stuff over like the people in England because they've literally killed everything off. So the only wildlife that's found is literally on the big private properties, and back in the day you had to be a nobleman or something to even hunt in the first place. It's like, is that what we want to become, right? Do we want to keep pushing away? And so like as hunters and anglers, we have to keep demanding that. And I think like Florida did a really good job, right? They made it a constitutional right here on their
Mhm.
most recent ballot, the right to hunt and fish. And I
Yeah.
think every state should be, I mean, if nothing else, like reach out to your representatives and be like, hey, we need to at a state level make this a constitutional right. Like it's inherent to what we are as Americans. I mean, and even more so, like, I mean, the indigenous people, right? Like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the whole entire subsistence living, like the caribou, situation up in northern Alaska, or the Plains Indians, and chasing the bison and stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
America at its core is hunting and fishing, and if you
Yeah.
don't see that and we don't talk about it, like we're making mistakes. So
Kind of to your point, it's like over the years we've become so disconnected. I mean, trapping, hunting, fishing was really part of what helped America grow. I mean, railroads were used for like um I mean, a lot of times they were used for like going chasing down bison and pasture pigeons and all that stuff, getting across country, everything like that. Trappers helped found a lot of things. I mean, dude, there's just like that, whether people like to admit it or not, it's such an integral part of the American history. And it's not really, it seems like it
yeah,
hasn't really been
absolutely.
until like maybe the last, I don't know, 100 years or so that, I guess the conveniences that we have nowadays, like refrigerators and all that stuff, where we don't have to, and of course, like production ranching and farming, like we don't have to go and get our own food. We don't have to raise and grow our own food. Like we can go to the grocery store now and we can get it. And now it's like we have this illusion that that's just what it is, And it's convenient,
Oh,
yes, but
absolutely.
it's convenient for sure, but it's in some ways a lie, like that's where you get it, but that's not where it comes from. And I feel like there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
people
people are so disconnected. Yeah,
yeah. And that's one of the cool things, I guess, or one of the nice things about like being a hunter is like you have a unique perspective, or even a fisherman or a rancher or something who's like directly involved in the allocation of food, the procurement, I
yeah,
guess, of food. Like you have a unique perspective, and it's very raw and honest, and sometimes very like not necessarily dirty, but grueling thing to do. And there is, I
sure.
guess, some honor in that as well, because you're, instead of, I guess, living somewhat like adjacent to the food web or whatever, you're actively taking you're taking an active role in it and participating in it. It's more raw, but it's more real in a
Mhm.
way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I'm one of my biggest like things I'm proud of is my freezer, right?
Yeah.
Like all of my process. I mean, my wife and I, we eat like 90% wild game and fish, and so and we're blessed, like, because the opportunities that I've had to harvest. And I think it's cool because if you, like, you brought up the mountain men and the fur trade and stuff like that, like they're very cool historically, but they were also like the worst of us from a conservation standpoint, like the buffalo
Yes.
fur hunters and everything like
Yeah.
that. I think that's what's so cool about the North American model of conservation is like we got so close to just wiping it all out.
Hmm.
And then that's when the outdoorsmen finally realized we're like, we've got to do something about this, right? I mean, like,
Hmm.
and you were talking about like the last 100 years. You're absolutely right. Like Aldo Leopold, right? Like probably one of the
Father wildlife
grandfathers of
management.
like modern day
Yeah.
conservationists.
Hmm.
Yeah, he didn't. I mean, he didn't even write Sand County Almanac until 1940.
Hmm.
So, and it was published
Yeah.
after his death. So, I mean, we're
Hmm.
talking less than 100 years, that we've really been talking about this. And now look at how well, all of wildlife across the United States is doing. And it's like these things work. We just have to be the ones to talk about it and make people that don't hunt and fish, like you said, 90% of them probably support it or at least aren't against it. But
Yeah.
we should be having these conversations to get that next generation of people interested in hunting and fishing,
Hmm.
because somebody's got
Mhm.
to carry the torch afterwards, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and
And it's
introduce people to that have never hunted
yeah.
or fished in their lives. So,
And have you ever heard of Shane Mahoney?
I don't think I have.
So he is like I don't know how to describe it. I guess he's like a more of like a philosophical conservationist, if you will. and he had a podcast, and he had a really interesting example. And I'm probably gonna butcher it. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but he's like, he was talking to somebody. He goes, imagine that a neighbor goes to the grocery store and he finds like a nice roast and some nice veggies, and he buys it and he takes it to your door. He's like, I was at the grocery store, I saw these things, and I thought, you might enjoy it, so here. And he's like, he goes on to say, like, some people, obviously many people are going to be appreciative of that because he spent his own money, and the fact that he took in consideration buying these things, like, it was very thoughtful of them to do so. But in some way that perhaps some people might be offended, thinking that, what, like, I can't afford to purchase my own things, whatever. Some people might be offended to that. But then he goes, but take somebody who took the time to hunt their own food. Maybe they went elk hunting and they had an extra roast. Maybe they have a little garden with some veggies and they just had some leftovers, and they put together this nice basket for you and took it to you. And they told you the same thing, like, hey, I just got back from this elk hunt, got some extra meat, had some extra veggies in the garden, thought you might enjoy it. Conceptually, it's the same thing, right? Like, you're taking these items and giving them to your neighbor. Probably can prepare the same meal with the things, just they're just different, and how they were procured are different. He goes, for whatever reason, in the second scenario where the person takes the meat that they harvested themselves and the vegetables they grew themselves, for whatever reason, it means more. And he's like, it might speak to a more primal part of us as a human, where somehow, like, way deep down inside, we know that it took much, much, much more effort to get the meat and to get the vegetables that you harvested yourself than to go to the store and buy it. And I think regardless of who you are, I think you can kind of resonate with that. So even if you're against hunting, or even if you're on the fence, I think if you were given, like, if you had a neighbor show up to you and one of those things, you would probably feel, I guess, a deeper connection to the second basket than you would the first. So it's like, we all, I think, instinctively, intuitively, I think we all know, whether we want to admit it or not, that to go through that, the hunting and the gathering part of it is different than just going to the store. There is something deeper to it, a deeper meaning to it. And I think if we could maybe be a little bit more, I guess, honest with ourselves about that, then people may not be so averse to the idea of hunting, and it may be a bit more open-minded to it. But I think, going back to your point about the social media stuff, like, unfortunately, in many ways, and even I've seen it a lot with fishing too, it's not often portrayed in the most, I guess, tasteful of ways, and unfortunately, I think that's what sticks with a lot of people, versus maybe the second thing, where people are a bit more, I guess, humble and taking a different approach to kind of sharing that with other folks. So it's very, very different. Like, I think,
and there's nothing wrong, like,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with doing your grip and grins and all that stuff like
yeah,
that. Like,
for sure.
I am not talking down to anybody that, that does, put stuff out there on social media. We just got to have the conversation about the conservation side and, like, really, really push that angle. Cause we are a minority anymore, especially hunting. So.
For sure.
And it's, and kind of talking off of what Jose was saying, like, it's one of those things to where you have people that there's a disconnection between what they eat and where it's sourced from. So there's all these people that say, okay, well, I don't agree with hunting, but yet I'm going to go to the store and buy this steak or buy this roast. And they don't really think about how these things are produced, how this mass amount of meat is produced. And that kind of leads into something else that I kind of wanted to talk about, which is kind of more for a local thing here. But it's State Bill 290, and it kind of goes into the CAFO's concentrated animal feeding operations and how it's affected the Buffalo National River. And there's been it's been an ongoing battle between the state, the federal government, and then the residents. And so I don't know exactly how this bill was formed. But it was formed, and essentially what it's going to do, it's going to prohibit permanent or long-term moratoriums on permits for large scale agricultural operations, which are in the watershed of the Buffalo National River. And so they did testing in the past where somehow a chunk of property got permitted to do a large, I believe it was a pig operation. And they started noticing all of these different, I guess, waste chemicals and stuff were noticed in the river and throughout this watershed. And they're trying to narrow down where it came from. And it came from this pig operation. And luckily they were able to shut it down, but the damage was already done. And there's been so much effort going in and cleaning up the Buffalo National River and its watershed for that, because of that. And now there's this state bill that's going through that was it's been, proposed numerous times, and somehow they got it in the back door. And so, yeah, I mean, I can actually put a link on this description that's going to talk more about it. It'll give more information on it. And we're just, a call to action for this is send an email opposing State Bill 290, just because it's kind of one of those ballot biology things. And this affects not only, the wildlife and conservation of wildlife, but it also affects recreation. I mean, so many people go to the Buffalo River just to float and kayak and not even go to hunt or fish, just to enjoy their summers. And this water is going to be getting polluted and stuff like that if this bill goes through. So,
yeah, I will never be the one. Like my family, I grew up, cattle ranch. I'm fifth generation. And so it's interesting, it's a fine line, right? Like we do have to be responsible stewards of the land, both from the agricultural side and from the hunting and fishing side. And that makes total sense, right? Like why would we want a bunch of, it's probably waste. I'm assuming like, the urine and feces and stuff like that. Like I've read and seen videos of, them, with the swine facilities down in like Georgia and in the Carolinas and stuff, and some of those ended up spraying all the waste in their giant waste pools and stuff, and the poor neighbors having health issues next to them and stuff. So it's like, how do we deal with this though, right? Like we are at an all-time stressing point as far as a population density in North America. The majority of people don't hunt, so it's like they're not sourcing their own food, but they got to eat, right? So it's like it's a delicate balance between being able to produce enough agricultural and farmed products and livestock to feed this many people, and also make sure that we're responsible stewards of the land. So you're absolutely right. Like there's got to be good legislation in place that helps both sides and protects these natural, like the buffalo. I mean, the buffalo, like you said, that's tumultuous enough in just the creation of the the national river preserve there. I know Clay Newcomb did a podcast on that, pretty extensive, and it I would never even really knew about it growing up in Wyoming, but it's fascinating just how much families and stuff lost just to even create that. So like now that it's there to recreate, like we damn sure better be taking care of it as best we can.
Exactly.
So it's a constant, back and forth, and we just have to make sure that we're, doing the best as we can, especially in these cities, to talk about it. And I do like that people are getting more into buying direct from local farmers, local ranchers and stuff like that small, I don't want to say boutique farms and stuff, but like people are more interested in sourcing their meat and from, okay, I want to actually know where this cow grew up or what did you feed them. And so I like to see that because ultimately it's going to put more money back in the farmer and rancher's pocket too, which God knows they've needed it. They get the tail end of all of it because corporate packing plants and stuff aren't in it to be nice. They're in it to make money
for sure.
So
exactly. And a lot of those companies, I mean, just the quality of the meat isn't even the same. Like you can go and you get the same stuff you get from the big companies at the store, and the quality of it's not nearly as good as the local farmers and stuff like that. It's just all about mass production, and they pump it full of chemicals, just try to get them, for instance, cattle,
produce yield.
A lot about, So, the average, before they send a cow to slaughter would be about 3 years normally if you're not pumping them full of all these chemicals, but they got it down to where now between 12 and 18 months they're getting these cows in for slaughter, and they're having more meat than a regular three-year growth pattern. And it's just they're pumping them full of growth hormones, they're getting them fat, getting them plump, getting them to the slaughter, and just the density of these plants where they have all these pigs and cows and stuff like that. It's just, for one, it's not healthy for the animal, the meat isn't as good, the quality isn't as good, and there's all these byproducts going into the rivers and the watersheds and stuff like that. So you're right, there definitely is a balance that we need to achieve. And I think if we're not talking about it, it's going to be harder to find that balance, because corporate America is just going to run the show if we're not out here talking about it as conservationists and just trying to responsibly source our meat and stuff like that. It's just, we definitely do need to be talking about it.
I think there's way more of a problem in like the poultry and swine sector than there is in beef.
Absolutely.
Like I can specifically speak to ranchers that I know here in Texas and definitely in Wyoming. It's definitely not like factory farming and ranching, at least on the beef side. Like you hear that's a made up thing. Like, so for example, my family, we run just shy of 1,000 head of cattle. So like we'll keep, some we'll keep some replacement heifers and stuff like that, but mainly we sell our calves every year, right? And if depending on what the price is, typically we'll go and finish them out, on a feedlot. So they're being fed, silage, they're being fed corn, they're being fed grass hay every single day. And like that's where people get that terrible comment. They're like, oh, look at all these poor cows. Like I can promise you right now, a cow in a feedlot eating like that every day is probably the happiest it's ever been, because it beats the hell out of eating that sagebrush up on the mountain in Wyoming, But it's and let's be honest, like, dude, corn fed, finished beef is just better tasting than, grass finished beef. And you can try to be as holistic as you want. And I guess if you want to eat grass finished meat, by all means, but I say just go find you a good rancher, get to know the people in your neighborhood, go talk to them and just buy your meat direct. They're more than happy to sell them. There's USDA butchers everywhere, and they'll personally take it there and drop it off. And in a couple weeks, you've got yourself a big old, freezer full of beef that you know exactly where it came from, and you helped them out. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
I know you kind of wanted to bring up and talk about corner crossing. So what brought that into your mind? I know you'd asked me about it earlier today. So
just because you're kind of out, you grew up in Wyoming, and that's kind of out in that direction. Because I know it was like Montana and stuff like that where all that was going on. Yeah. And didn't they finally legally shoot it down? So last week or the week before.
Yeah. So the district court. And I'm going to butcher this. I'm not sure if it was out of Montana or out of Colorado, did find in favor with those hunters out of Missouri. So obviously that whole case went down. They corner crossed on a piece of property in southeastern Wyoming during an elk hunt, and it made headlines everywhere, right? Because they got ticketed for trespass and all this jazz, and then they were found not guilty in the criminal court, and then basically the landowner went back to him for, I don't even know, crazy amount of money under civil court, and then it was just again found that they didn't break any laws, and so they didn't owe him anything civilly. But the precedent that it sets is that now in at least I want to say Wyoming, Montana, and I think Colorado, it's basically defined that corner crossing is legal, right? And so it's interesting, and I got to thinking about this after you asked me, right? So like my family's ranch on the land we own on the mountain, we might have 1,000 acres here, we might have 500 acres over here, and there's a lot of BLM public land in between. So like where we're at, we really don't have that landlocked checkerboard style. That's more down towards like the railroad. And that's originally what that came from, was when the Transcontinental Railroad was created. They checkerboarded it, and every other piece was a state piece, and then the UP owned, or whoever, it was Union Pacific and whoever else at that time owned the other portions. And then they were able to sell those off to basically, I want to say, help fund building the railroad. And I don't know my 1800s history enough to tell you definitively, but so personally, like as a land access, proponent, I am all about it, right? Like I say it's a huge win. I mean, there are lands, like everybody should be able to go to them.
Yeah.
Coming from a ranching family, it does worry me to some degree, right? Because like anything else with public lands, it does get abused. And so I just hope that people don't, go and just absolutely destroy this land and just be good stewards of the wild and stuff like that. Yeah. And so and then the other part that I've talked to some outfitters and stuff, and that from like the economy of like, hunting and fishing, and those guys owe their whole entire businesses to basically they've got these leases of these ranches. It opens up a whole different game now where, they might have been planting a place for 20 years, and now they could have some some dude that just drives his pickup all the way up into the middle of their elk hunt or God knows what, trying to look at this 300-acre piece of BLM that there's probably never been an elk on, and then he just blew up the hunt and stuff. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be some heat and debate and stuff like that, especially on the outfitting side. But I think overall, from a land access initiative, it was a huge win. And honestly, I support that. I just hope that the people that do corner cross do it responsibly and respect the private landowner, because at the end of the day, it's their property they're adjacent to,
Yeah, absolutely. So. And that's one thing that, unfortunately, there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to mess something up. And then that's where we get the phrase, that's the reason we can't have nice things, and I hate that. But I do agree that it does open up a lot more access to these lands that were essentially blocked in by other people's property. Yeah. But I mean, I agree with you. People just take care of stuff.
Yeah.
Just be responsible, be considerate, just be a decent human being. Come on.
Yeah. It's like, it's like you can walk down the sidewalk in front of my house, but just don't park your car on my grass. You know what I mean? Right, it's just one of those things. Like, that sidewalk's public property, but please don't drive on my grass. So it's just, we have to remember that. And it's a huge win. It does open up a lot of acreage for public recreating. And so I don't know, I'm actually interested to go check some maps and stuff and see, how much this is. Cause if you want to take the time, I'm telling you right now, if you want to go find, first off, cause Onyx is not 100% accurate. So if you want to go pull the plot maps and then people need to keep that in mind, right? You might be armed to the teeth, think that you're on private or public land, but you may have missed it by a couple feet and you might be trespassing, right? So it's a dangerous, you better know damn sure that you're on public land, and do your research. And then if you want to take the time to go from one, because they're usually they're usually sections. So it's usually a mile by mile square. And if you want to take the time to go from one corner to the next, to get onto the next corner, to get on the next corner, to get 5 miles back in there and hunt a 1 mile by 1 mile square, by all means, man, because you've got way more time on your hands than I do. I can assure you that. So,
yeah. That's I've never thought about why land was split up like that. I mean, I've read the articles in Outdoor Life and I've seen, some episodes of Meat Eater where they've talked about it and, other podcasts have talked about it. And it was always an interesting thing that I always wondered why the land was checkerboarded like that. And I never thought about it being the railroad going through and stuff like that.
Yeah. I had no idea.
That's pretty interesting.
That's 100% where it came from. And, it's interesting that it's still that way. I mean, obviously the railroad sold all of it off at this point in time. So it's other different public landowners, but in most of it, everybody's just running cattle on and stuff. And that's another frustrating thing. You see all these ranches and stuff. Like I said, I'm fifth generation. There's not a lot of old ranches left in the Rockies anymore. And a lot of these places have been sold and bought up by some investment broker out of, North Carolina, South Carolina, and they use it for their private hunting escape, and they take their rich buddies out there and clients to hunt. And that's kind of a craw on the side too, right, from the whole entire outdoor industry. Cause I mean, that's not what it's all about. And I don't know. Texas has a lot of that, right? Like all the high fence stuff like that. And it just kind of pushes the small man like that, the somebody that doesn't make 6 figures every year, you want them to have the same opportunities to hunt as everybody else. And I'll tell you what, before Onyx was a thing, I was just thinking about, we used to go hunt everywhere and we always knew the ranchers that were adjacent to our family's property. And then I had a pretty good idea of where our property lines were, but I wasn't 100% certain. It was as a kid, my grandpa I'll go over there to this ridge and hunt down there by this spring and hunt. I probably trespassed all over the darn place and just never even knew it. And the landowner probably didn't know it either because he didn't know exactly where his plots were. So then Onyx became a thing, and now it's a huge battle, right? And so I don't know. We just got to use these tools responsibly.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's a lot more tools now than there has been historically. So, and I think that's what some of the gray area comes into, because there are some people that absolutely do think that they're in their right to do certain activities in certain locations, which is great. But then you are going to get those that are going to try to use that to their advantage and do things they're not supposed to be doing. And it's definitely a fine line.
I don't know this for certain, but I actually just saw on Instagram today, some guy's post on his story, he was suggesting that Idaho might be talking about banning electronic mapping. as a whole. Like, I don't know, like
Really?
e-scouting and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know if that was something that he was saying like he'd like to see done.
Yeah.
Cause he's been commenting a lot on like, there was a influencer or something in Utah that got caught for basically, shed hunting illegally and putting up cameras where he shouldn't have and stuff like that. And I think he just got found guilty or something, but I'm gonna have to look into that because that'd be kind of interesting. I wonder as technology and like gets more modern in hunting and fishing, when the states finally do start cracking down. And like you've already seen it in Arizona, right? Like Arizona doesn't allow any game camera use now.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of time before the state game and fish agency start working with the state legislatures to kind of rein some of that back in, because it's got to be fair chase, right? And sometimes it seems like we've got a hell of an upper hand now.
Yeah, for sure. Technology has been definitely. I can only imagine the success rates and how much they've changed. And I'm sure it's kind of like a fluctuation because you think about before this technology even existed, hunters knew the animals, they knew the land, and so their success rates were probably more. And I feel like then technology started assisting, and then now we don't have the skills, or I can't say we, but a lot of us probably don't have the skills that our grandparents probably had back before this technology existed. And so I feel like if there's a point where this technology gets banned, I think success rates are going to decrease massively.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, 30 years ago, you got to think about this, right? Like 30 years ago, people weren't going like out of state near as much to go hunt. Like, if you could you imagine, living in Arkansas, right? Drawing an elk tag, putting in for an elk tag in Wyoming up by, let's say, in between Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone National Park, like in the thoroughfare, there's an area, it's all backcountry. It's like 20 miles in on horses. You just wouldn't have done it, right? Like, you don't know anything about that area. Or if you did, you were going to go hire a guide because I mean, and so it's just interesting now how much it's opened up like the layman to be able to go explore some of these areas. And like Wyoming requires, and I'm sure a lot of states do, any wilderness hunting, like you have to have a guide if you're non-resident, or at least have to go hunting with a Wyoming resident because, it's like you don't have any business going up there in some of that wilderness without knowing what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So
Texas has stuff like that on the Devil's River. I mean, you have to have a guide. You can't go out there and DIY it anymore, which is good because you got people losing their lives out there because they have this idea, I want to go do this, and they just don't know what they're doing.
They don't know the chutes. They don't know. Have you done the Devils?
I have not. I want to so bad.
It's pretty high on my list. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like I got to imagine you have to go like when the runoff's pretty low. So I'm guessing it's like an early summer trip or maybe an early fall trip. I don't know when. I don't know. I got to do my research first, right?
Yeah. We've talked about doing it as a show, but just between schedules and live, it's been hard to schedule it. But we do plan at some point on hiring a guide and going and doing like a 3 or 5 day trip. I feel like it'd be awesome.
If you do that, let me know. I might be interested in joining and help you guys split some costs because that's definitely high on my list. And I fished with Alvin Dudeau out of Austin a couple years ago. And he's done some trips. That's how I found out about the Devils. I was like, this is a pretty crazy little stream out there. So I've been wanting to do it, but I mean, I don't even have a boat. So
right.
that's
if
next
we were
on my
do
list.
It, we would probably go with someone with a boat or a raft, or we might kayak it, but it would be an awesome trip. And we actually, one of my buddies, was recommending that we go with Alvin if Alvin would go and guide us.
Alvin's great, man. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So, but that'll definitely be something in the future, hopefully. And if we end up going, we'll definitely let you know because that'll be a good trip to do. So, but you were talking about a lot of hunting in the backcountry and stuff in Wyoming. So, if I'm not mistaken, I think Wyoming BHA had a lot to do with a lot of the corner crossing stuff, didn't they?
Yeah, they pushed really hard. Obviously, Meat Eater. Pushed that really hard along with backcountry hunters and anglers to help support and like pay for those 400s out of Missouri's court costs and stuff. So there was definitely like a lot of nonprofit involvement in getting that pushed across. And like I said, being a land access initiative, proponent, I'm all about it. So I think it's a huge win. It's great to see, because it's a constant battle we're having to fight. And it was one that needed to be answered. Honestly, a lot of years ago, it surprised me it took this long to any sort of case law or any sort of precedent to be made. So now it's just about people, being responsible with it. And I hope that Wyoming BHA and stuff like that starts to promote that side of things. Cause there is a lot of, I mean, I can speak around back home. Like I grew up in Riverton, Wyoming, and some of the BLM areas and stuff just absolutely get destroyed. I mean, people take their junk out there and drop their sofas off and their washers and dryers and fridges. And,
Really?
yeah, they become target practice, and sure, you shoot at them, but then it's still scrap metal and stuff. And it's like, guys, we got to be better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I can't stand when people just don't take care of the resources that we have.
oh man, it's awful, but
Yeah.
it's a constant fight.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's something that, I mean, I'm sure generations of past always dealt with issues very similar to that as well, because there's always going to be somebody that has to ruin everything.
Well, we just got to do. I mean, Alvin. Speaking of Alvin, he's really good. Like he puts on like the river crash bash. Yeah, exactly. Every year, so it's like we got to get out there and do more of that. Put these events together and hopefully get some participation from others. But that's one good thing about the people that do follow like BHA and stuff like that. They're usually always awesome. They're go-getters. They're willing to help, and it's amazing what some of these people are willing to put the time in to do. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we've talked about in the past is possibly doing something, because have you ever heard of the Honey Hole Angling podcast?
I have not.
So they're actually out of San Antonio, which they haven't put out an episode in a while. I'm not sure. I know that the main guy landed and he ended up moving up to, I think Lubbock or something like that. So they haven't put out an episode in a while, but they used to do something called Honey Hole Hates Trash. And essentially people, while they're out there fishing and stuff, they would say, show us all the trash you pick up, weigh the trash, and you'll be entered into a raffle for all these different prizes and stuff like that. And I think Jose actually tied up some flies for some people that won the raffle, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah. And so they used to do this thing called Honey Hole Hates Trash. And basically, they would say, okay, well, if you collect this much trash while you're out on the river, you'll be put in for a raffle this many times. And they would have vendors, donate stuff, and people would win prizes for picking up trash. So we've talked about in the past possibly doing something like that, to where we would kind of help out with people that wanted to recreate one way or the other, but also do something that's going to benefit the ecosystem. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's like,
we need to talk more about.
As Mountain Man Provision Co. gets bigger and hopefully, we can pick up, followers and just keep being consistent. Like that's our goal. I mean, like that right there, it's not always about like, maybe we're like the grizzly bear. We're not going to restore that sword overnight, but like little stuff like that, you can put on these events in your local communities and go get after it, And so that's the kind of grassroots stuff that we're trying to get behind and help fund and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's definitely something that, we're big on, and there's a lot of companies out there that are doing some stuff, and we'd like to shed some light on that. Do you know of any other companies that do anything like that, or any other businesses that are currently having an initiative for something like that?
Oh man, I'm sure there's a pile of them out there off the top of my head being put on. I can't name anything, but that's, that's kind of like some specifically about Mountain Man Provision Co. I know when we were offline before we were recording, we were talking about like the saddle behind me. Mm-hmm. So like, that's kind of our goal. Like obviously we want to give 25% back of everything, but we're trying to give people a reason to support and like join the Mountain Man Provision Co. Community, right? So I'm actually running a giveaway. My best friend Colt George, G-Bar G Saddles. You can follow him on Instagram at G3 Custom Leather. He built this hunting saddle behind me, and so it's like a $4,000 rig, and we're just giving it away. So right now until July 13th, I'm running on the website every $10 spent, and then I've been doing double entries, basically like one day it'll be hats, another week it'll be shirts, something like that. Every $10 spent gets you an entry, and we're donating 25% right back to conservation. So it's a win-win. We're starting with the saddle. Eventually I want to build this thing up to where I can start giving away hunting and fishing trips to some, maybe a helicopter hog hunt or something like that. Some of these things that like people would never get to do. So yeah, that's hopefully we can get some people listening to your podcast to come check us out and get in there to win the saddle. Cause if they don't use it, I'm sure they know somebody that will, and it's an awesome rig to have for fall hunting season. So
yeah, dude, that's awesome. So where can they find your website to where they can actually go and buy stuff and enter?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I should probably say that. So you can follow us like any social media, like Mountain Man Provision Co. on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that. The website itself is mountainmanprovisionco.com. You can Google us. Mountain Man Provision Co. will be the first ones to pop up. And so, yeah, go check us out. Constantly, adding new things. Like I said, I'm doing those fishing shirts and neck gaiters. They'll be coming out here pretty quick for the summer session, and I'll probably run those as like a triple entry for the saddle once I release them. And we might run that for a week or something. So yeah, it's been fun.
That's awesome, man. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'll definitely put all the links and stuff to your website and your Instagram in the description. And I can't think of a better way to end the episode. So we appreciate your time, man. And for those of y'all watching to the end, we'll catch y'all next time.
This has been Wildlife Outdoors. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook at Wildlife Outdoors and on Instagram at wild.life.outdoors. Let's go live life on the wild side.